You're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Hello everybody and welcome into RBLR Lightning, or should I say RBLRS now, the Tampa Bay Strikers joining the Tampa Bay Sport. See, we could give me the thumbs down in the background, but just an inside joke there. But RBL Lightning, welcome in guys. My name is Jake Ricker. Alongside me is my good friend and co-host Matt Gannon. Matt, we've had quite the busy last couple of days here between the NHL entry draft and NHL free agency officially getting underway. There's a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, this has been one of the most hectic's probably not the right word, but definitely one of the busiest off seasons for the Lightning in a couple of years, 5 years or so. But I do want to make something clear. It's RBLR plus now, Jake. So
RBLR plus, that's right. There's too many teams to keep up with now. But we love it here in Tampa Bay. All the teams winning in every sport, you name it, we're the best at it, right? That's how it works. But let's start off with the draft. I think that's the first thing that we got to talk about. Obviously, the draft was kind of exciting for Lightning fans, I think, this year because it was the first time that they had a first-round draft pick since 2019. A lot of people speculated, we as well, said that it's a strong possibility the Lightning might trade their first-round draft pick, as they're known to do, especially with them being at 31. But as the draft – actually, before we can get to our pick, quickly, Matt, any thoughts on the draft? Because there were a lot of surprises in this. Shane Wright did not go number 1 overall. He fell all the way down to 4. There were a couple of other teams making some big trades early on before the draft. Chicago making moves. They sent out Alex DeBrincat as well during the draft. Lots of big moves. Thoughts on any of that before we get to our pick?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily, shocked that they took Slavkovsky first overall. But I was watching the Hockey Guys stream, so I wasn't actually watching the ESPN draft.
Smart.
But then I keep hearing it. Then it was Nemec. Then it was who went third over? A Cooley. And At that point, I was shocked. I was, for the last 3 years, the kid was supposed to go first overall. So, Seattle, they definitely got a great player in Wright. I can't imagine any of those picks will be bad for any of those teams, but it's definitely surprising. So,
yeah, I think Seattle won big by getting Shane Wright, and they were very happy that he fell at home. That was the funniest thing to me is, these drafts, these first round, they're always, long, and all the teams go up there and they do all these, thanking the city for hosting. They'll or congratulate the Stanley Cup champion, whoever that is, unless you're the Lightning during the COVID year. Nobody decided to thank us during the draft. But teams doing all that kind of stuff. But I laughed when it came time for Seattle's pick because everybody's doing that. And Ron Francis walks up to the podium, looks over and goes, "Yeah, we'll take Shane Wright," and then just walks off. That was it. He didn't thank Montreal, didn't congratulate Colorado. He just got right to it. He's like, "I'm making my pick," and that's that. I thought that was fantastic. And I got a kick out of that. And by the way, props to Gary Bettman. I know a lot of people give him a really hard time all the time because of the stuff that's gone on, and rightfully so, because nobody likes to deal with lockouts and stuff. But he does a great job at egging on the fans, and I get a kick out of it.
He was a complete showman that entire draft. He's completely embraced the villain character, and what was I listening to? I think it was the Steve Dangle podcast, and they were saying nobody really even knows why Bettman gets booed anymore. It's just kind of that guy's doing it, so
it's
I'm
just
gonna
what you do.
If
right.
he was in front of I don't really have anything against him. Yeah, everybody's got their problems, and I'm sure there's a laundry list, but he's no Manfred or Goodell or Silver. They've all got their problems, but he's done a really great job of embracing that villain role, and it makes me laugh. So him announcing the Canadians trades and the Blackhawks trades, it was some showmanship right
Yeah,
there.
specifically when he did the Canadians trade and they were booing him, and he just goes, "You guys have lost some pep in your step here a little bit," and then immediately everybody started booing even louder. But all fun stuff there. But let's get to the Lightning pick there because there were a lot of fireworks before. But then we got to pick number 31, and the Lightning did make a selection. So finally, it paid off. Waiting all that time in these long drafts, we got to see the Lightning pick. And with the 31st overall pick in the draft, the Lightning would select forward Isaac Howard. Isaac is a left winger. He had 82 points last season, 33 goals, 49 assists in 60 games playing for USA Hockey. He is committed to the Minnesota Duluth for next year college team. So he will not be with the Syracuse Crunch, but playing in college to start things off. He's nicknamed the Iceman. And Matt, Howard made quite the impression very quickly with Lightning fans. As there's a clip that has gone around all over the place where he was being interviewed. He mentioned that he said he thought he was the best looking person there, so he thought he would be the best dressed player as well. He was wearing a all white suit with the American belt. Um, he was having some fun, and people got a kick out of it for sure. But Matt, I'll go to you first. Your thoughts on the Lightning's first overall selection, Isaac Howard?
There's quite the dichotomy between hockey fans. You've got the really old school guys, and you've got the new school progressive guys. And I don't think I fall into either place. I heard a lot of people complaining if this guy played in the 90s, he'd have his head taken off. And then I've heard
I heard some of that too. Yeah,
a lot. I've heard more people saying, I love the swagger, I love the confidence, and I'm completely on that ship. I mean, first things first. The entire draft, despite how long it was was a really entertaining draft overall. And I think with
you're right.
With Howard coming in, making his mark like that, I mean, I love everything about the kid so far. If you can at least fake that confidence, some of it will show on the ice as well. So I don't expect him to see him for probably at the very least 2 years. Even that I think is wishful thinking, but no, I'm really happy with him. I wasn't expecting them to take him. I saw a lot of draft rankings had him somewhere at between 15 and 20, and even in the 25. So I think we really got ourselves a good steal possibly. I've seen a lot of people saying he could be the steal of the draft, could be kind of like the Cole Caulfield. Not comparing the two, but just in how they just kind of fell. They were touted so high, and he was never ever projected to go top 10, but I think the highest I saw him was 14 or 15, which is still, if we can get him at 31, that's a hell of a steal.
Yeah, he was definitely higher on a lot of people's draft boards, and it was surprising to most that he fell that far, and the Lightning jumped on it. And he's a great goal scorer, is what he mostly is. 82 points, as I mentioned, 33 goals and 49 assists. The kid knows how to score and play really good offense, so that's going to be his thing. We'll see how that translates into the AHL when he does finally get there, or how it translates into his college career as well, because a lot of times just because you score a lot of points early on in your career does not mean that's going to translate, as we've seen with some other players. But overall, the kid looks like he's really confident. He looks like he's got good speed, good scoring ability, and he could be a big help for the Lightning moving forward here. So I do like this pick overall. I think he's got good potential. But, as it is with any draft, is you really don't know if it's going to be a bust or a steal until, like you mentioned, 2 years, maybe at wishful thinking, probably more than likely like 3 to 5 years we're not going to see him for, or that'll be a point where we can determine if it's actually a steal or a bust. But from what we do know now, I think this is a good pick overall for the Lightning.
And despite it being the 31st pick, up until a couple of years ago, that was a second round pick. Nobody gets really excited about it. But this is the first time I've really been excited to watch, a draft pick develop. Like, in the grand scheme of things, I really haven't been a fan of the Lightning for super long, or hockey in general, but, I have dove headfirst into it. So this is the first time I'm really going to be like watching a prospect with a close eye. And it's like, on, the day before, Christmas Eve, you go and peek at your Christmas presents, and you like kind of gotta like, you can't tell anybody what it is, but like it's kind of like that. You just gotta bite your tongue and bide your time and just wait, just be patient, and that's exactly what I have to learn how to do here because I'd love to see him play come October, but that's why there are smarter people in power.
Yeah,
than
absolutely.
myself.
Right. But you're right. I think his confidence is also why some people are excited to see him play because he made such an impact at the draft, even though he was the 31st overall pick, second to last.
He's a rare personality in the sport of
Right.
hockey, which is something that the sport doesn't need, but it could definitely
Could help.
use some more personalities.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, the Lightning made 5 other picks in this draft. We're not going to go over every single one of them, but we will go through a couple of them and give our overall thoughts on some of these draft picks. Lucas Edmonds the Bolts actually traded up for this pick. They would go on to trade picks 103 and pick 169 to the Los Angeles Kings in exchange for pick 86. And with that pick, they selected Lucas Edmonds. And anytime a team goes up and trades up, it means that there's a player that they really want, and they think they can't sit back and wait. That's exactly what the Lightning did to pick up Lucas Edmonds. Edmonds had 113 points last year, 34 goals, 79 assists in 68 games for the Kingston Knights in the OHL. Another pick that I really like, he's got a lot of offensive talent. It seemed like that's kind of the theme the Lightning went with this draft was offensive talent. Anytime a player can put up 113 points in just 68 games is extremely impressive. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that talent translates into the AHL and hopefully later the NHL. But another guy, right winger this time, that has good offensive talent.
So, despite him being an overager, I do want to say he's 20 or 21. He did lead his team in scoring this year. He was also on the same team and at some parts of the season on the same line as Shane Wright, who I believe he finished with like 90-something points or maybe even a little less. So when you are outscoring the kid who's supposed to be going first overall, granted you got a couple years on him, you've matured into your body more and honed your skill set a little bit more, but still when you are beating a kid with exceptional status on your team by 20 points or so,
It's impressive.
I really like this pick, and this is somebody that I kind of can expect to see possibly at some time this year. I wouldn't really count on it, but he is reporting directly to Syracuse, I believe.
That is the belief, yes.
Okay, and that's if training camp goes well. This is kind of all down the line, but him being an overager, he's got the ability to do that. So I'd expect him to see him, if we do have some injury problems, which we do and we will have later on in the season, I'd expect to see him in a couple of games. I'd definitely like to.
Yeah, and I think he's got some potential. So the Lightning then picked next in the 5th round with the 160th overall pick. They selected a goaltender and took Nick Malik. His father actually played in the NHL as well as a defenseman. He went 15-9-9 with a .922 save percentage in 34 games last year. So a goaltender that the Lightning tend to pick at least one goaltender in each draft, I feel like, because I think they've done it a couple of times before. But pretty good stats for him, 15-9-9, .922 save percentage. Has some potential to be a decent goaltender in the future. And the Lightning's pipeline when it comes to goalies is pretty small for the most part. Actually, Matt, let me ask you this and see if you know this. A fun stat. Out of Lightning drafted goaltenders, how many of them had at least 10 wins in the National Hockey League?
Lightning draft picks.
Lightning drafted goaltenders.
God.
So goaltenders that had to be drafted by the Lightning, how many of them have over 10 regular season wins in the NHL?
Oh my God.
You got the easy one, Andrei Vasilevsky, obviously.
Yeah. I'm going to go 7.
7. Good guess, but no, it is actually only 3. 3 goaltenders that have been drafted by the Lightning have 10 or more wins. One of them being Andrei Vasilevsky. So the Lightning do not have a good record.
Do you have the other two?
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
I have to go back and find it. It's two minor guys. They had their wins were like 10 and 11, I think, in their careers in the NHL. So yeah, like just above that mark. But
so don't remember this guy's name.
Right. Well, not necessarily. You never know. Hey, he could be the next Andre Vasilevsky for all we know. But my point is, the Lightning do not have a good history drafting goaltenders. But I do like this pick. Like I mentioned, he has some good stats. He has his dad played in the NHL, so sometimes that can help out a little bit too. His dad can give him a little bit of wisdom, maybe some advice when he gets to the National Hockey League. But
quick tangent. So it's pronounced Malik.
Malik.
His dad, Marek Malik. Do you remember his 15 minutes of fame in the NHL?
I don't remember.
So it was, I can't quite remember when. I want to say it was back in like 05, 06 season. It was when the Rangers were wearing the Lady Liberty jerseys. Played for the Rangers, and they were it was them and I can't quite remember, but it was right when they introduced the shootout. They they were like 15 rounds deep. I mean, nobody was scoring. It was Lundqvist versus whoever else. Nobody was scoring. It was just a stalemate between the goalies. And here comes big sixth defenseman Marek Malik. Just kind of like, well, this is the last guy on our bench. What's he gonna do? Comes down the ice, between the legs, top shelf. It was just completely unexpected. It was before the between the legs move was like, all that fancy, used extremely seldomly. So you look it up after this show. Marek Malik between the legs goal. I mean, it was just absolutely electric. So having his son on the or at least having his son as a draft pick is just kind of a funny story.
Yeah, I definitely have to go check that out because I did not know about that. But
I'm sure you've seen the clip before. I'd guarantee it almost, but
right.
It's kind of hard off the top of your head.
Possibly. He is also, I believe, with the Lightning. Because the Lightning have a development camp going on currently. And if I'm not mistaken, he is there. So we'll get to see some of these guys a little bit and how they're doing in development camp. So keep your eyes out there for that. All those Joe Smith and some of the beat reporters have been reporting on that kind of stuff. But Lightning development camp is currently underway as we speak. Next pick for the Lightning was their pick at 192, and they would select Connor Kurth. Connor, he had 81 points, 35 goals, and 46 assists in 62 games for the Saints last year in the USHL. Another pick that I thought was pretty good overall. He plays multiple positions, because I think we mentioned this last time. Most guys don't have a set position anymore where a lot of guys will play either side of the wing. Sometimes they'll play center. Connor, though, plays basically all three positions. Another kind of an offensive-minded guy. 81 points is very impressive, especially for a sixth-round pick. So another offensive forward. And I like this pick as well. And then, of course, we have the two other seventh-round picks the Lightning had in Dylan Gill and Klavs Weinbergs. A very fun name to try and pronounce, and all people were entertained by that. There's not too much information on either of those guys, though, unfortunately. But they're seventh-round picks. They're kind of shot in the darks. Hopefully they turn into something. Who knows? They could be the next Andre Palat. But don't know too much on them. But Matt, any thoughts on these guys?
If I knew anything, I'd tell you. But no, my draft knowledge pretty much stopped at Nick Malik. So the only thing I got for Klavs is 10 out of 10 name.
He does have a fantastic name, right?
You're my draft correspondent, Jake.
And actually, fun fact about this draft, so pick 224, that's actually supposed to be the last pick if you were to do, 32 teams, 7 rounds, it would be 224. But there was one team, I think it was Detroit. One of the teams had like an extra pick this year because of something that went on with one of the signings. So that's why there were 225 picks this year. So fun fact, you normally would not see 225.
It was Minnesota.
Yes, that's what it was. It was Minnesota.
Yeah, one of their players, I can't quite remember, but they did get an additional draft pick, yes.
Right, which is why there was 225. So a little bit of fun fact there. But Lightning overall, I thought did a pretty good job in the draft. They did select a defenseman in the 7th round. That was Dylan Gill. He was a left-handed defenseman, which is something I talked about, wanted to see the Lightning draft in this. I was hoping that for a first-round pick, but they did get a left-handed defenseman, which I thought was a position that needed them, so that was good. Overall, if I have to give the Lightning a grade, which this is really hard to do, because as we've mentioned multiple times, you don't know how these guys are going to turn out, so it's really hard to give a grade on this draft. But I would say like a B range for me. I thought they drafted pretty well, positions of need. I thought they took some of the best players available when they were there, and I really liked their first overall pick in Isaac Howard. So good draft overall, I thought, for the Lightning.
Yeah, as it stands, I think a B is a good grade just because, we have no idea what any of these people will be. In about 10 years' time, I suppose we can actually give it a final score. But I think a B or even a C, just you can't really put a number to it or a letter.
Right. Absolutely. But overall, good draft. Let us know what you guys think, of course, in the comments as well. Love to hear your thoughts as always. But moving on, the next part we have to talk about is free agency. Actually, before we get to free agency, the Lightning did make a move in the coaching situation. So if you guys remember, Derek Lalonde did go to the Detroit Red Wings to become the head coach. And the Lightning and Red Wings decided to make a coaching swap as Jeff Blashill is the new assistant coach for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was the former head coach of the Detroit Red Wings before he was let go. Matt, I'll get your thoughts first on this. Your thoughts as Blashill coming over to be the assistant coach for the Lightning.
The first thing that stands out to me is that we traded one bald guy for another bald guy, which at least we're keeping it consistent. Blashill's coaching tenure in Detroit, it's less than stellar, but you can't really pin it on him, just because look at the rosters he was given throughout those 5 or 6 years he was there. It was hardly anything to compete with, so I wouldn't put too much thought in it. I know him and John Cooper go way back. They've been friends for a long time, have worked together. It was honestly, you could kind of see the writing on the wall, but we still have our core, John Cooper, and this is still kind of to be determined, but Jeff Halpern is still with us. I don't see him going anywhere.
I think he would have left by this point if there was going to be a coaching change. I think we would have seen him go.
The only team that really concerns me was San Jose, but as far as I've heard, they've got their eyes on somebody else. And this is at least for this year, and then we also still have Rob Zettler. So with Coop at the helm and two excellent first officers, we're going to be in good hands. And Jeff Blashill himself, again, just despite his spotty coaching record, he was still an NHL head coach, and it's terrific to have experience behind the bench, even with a star-studded team on and off the ice.
Right, and as you mentioned, it was a tough situation in Detroit, and also he's not coming here to be the head coach. He's coming here to be an assistant coach, which is a very different position. And as you mentioned, he has a long history with Cooper, and Cooper's won at basically every single level he's ever been at. So he's had some success, and I think he'll be a good assistant coach for the Lightning. But we will have to wait and see how that all plays out. But as of right now, he's the new assistant coach for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now moving on into free agency. So the Lightning made a couple of minor signings before free agency officially got underway. A couple of AHL guys that they had gone and re-signed, a couple of guys that they were going to set to let go and did not send qualifying offers to. But I want to start in free agency specifically. The first move the Lightning made was signing defenseman Ian Cole from the Carolina Hurricanes to a 1-year, $3 million deal. And I'll start here before I get your thoughts on this, Matt. I really like this. I think Ian Cole is a good pickup for the Lightning. So after trading Ryan McDonagh, we knew they needed another left-handed defenseman, and they went out and got one in Ian Cole. Ian Cole was pretty solid for Carolina. He's had a couple of good years. Again, as I mentioned, he is a left-handed defenseman, so he fills in that slot nicely. I saw it kind of as the replacement for Jan Ruda, even though Jan Ruda is a right-handed defenseman. He kind of takes that slot for Jan Ruda. He was paid something similar to what Ruda ended up getting with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But overall, he's a really good defensive defenseman. He's not going to show you much offensively, but I think it was a good pickup by the Lightning.
Yeah, again, Ian Cole, he is not by any stretch, this sounds kind of mean saying, but a noteworthy player. He's somebody that flies under the radar, which, I guess that's honestly all we can ask for. You never
Sometimes that's the best thing for a defenseman.
Exactly, especially, your third pair lefty, I say it often, not on here, but, if I'm not, as a defenseman, if I'm not saying your name, that's a good thing. It really is. So, Ian Cole, yeah, he's very, very sound defensively. He's definitely no Ryan McDonough. But I like this signing. I think the cap hit may be a little high for my liking, but it's a short-term deal, and
1 year.
He's still NHL caliber. He's NHL ready. He's a veteran presence, and he's got a championship pedigree. He won at least one cup with Pittsburgh. I know in 17 he was. I'm not quite sure about 16, but carries some championship pedigree with him as well. So he knows how to win. He knows what it takes. Big tough guy as well. So we're not lacking on the size on the defense department either. I think he will slot in just fine.
Yeah, and I think the main reason we picked him up was because he was a left-handed defenseman, and the Lightning before he was there only had 2 other left-handed defensemen. So that was a big position of need for them. So that's why I like this signing as well. And at 1 year, there's not really any risk to the Lightning. If he doesn't work out, they can let him walk next offseason. So the next one that they went out, next signing they made during free agency, they signed forward Felix Robert to a 2-year entry-level contract. He was with Pittsburgh's AHL team before this. He's going to be an AHL guy. Who knows if we'll see him in the NHL at some point. But from what we saw, he did have a pretty good year last year in the AHL. Has been putting up a decent amount of points as well. So while this is just a signing mostly for the crunch, he might be a guy we might want to keep our eye on because he's got a little bit of potential, I think. The next signing that the Lightning made was forward Vlad Nemestikov, who is coming back to the Tampa Bay Lightning. A lot of people were really excited to see this name back on their timeline. Nemestikov, who played with the Lightning a couple years earlier in his season. Actually, his best years came with the Lightning. He is back on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. Matt, I thought the cap hit was a little high for Nemestikov, but at a 1-year deal, doesn't show a ton of risk. And he was really good when he was with the Lightning. He will slot in nicely to the lineup. He's kind of the Palat replacement, but 1 year, not much risk there. But nice to have a familiar face back in the lineup again.
Yeah. So since the last time he's been with the Lightning, we traded him in 18. Yeah. Right. I know. So we traded him, Libor Hayek, and somebody else for McDonough and JT Miller, and
Correct.
That was his breakout year. He played most of that year on the top line. He had top line minutes, and we just flipped him to the Rangers in hopes that he would become a great scoring winger. But, it didn't happen, but he has had to evolve his game over the years. He had a quick stint with Dallas this year. He signed with Detroit, in the start of the season, last season. And he's quickly become a good defensive forward. I'm not going to call him like a shutdown forward or, anything like Anthony Cirelli, but he has managed to find a way to adapt his game and stay relevant and, become a trade target at the deadline. Like teams want this guy. So I'm not at all upset with the 2.5 mil. Not at all. I think he will be able to slot in just fine. He does bring a great defensive presence. He's not going to take any kind of job away from Anthony Cirelli. I guess maybe early in the season he might, but I like this. he wasn't super highly touted as a prospect, but we knew that there was some skill there, and he hasn't really been on contending teams since he did leave the Lightning. So we can see if there is still a little bit more to give with Nemesnikov. He was a great guy. I don't know anybody that can say a bad thing about him. He's just another player I think will fit in just fine.
I think he fits in really well with the bottom six.
Absolutely.
That's where he's going to slot in the most. But once the Lightning made the signing too, it was basically understood that Palat and Ruda were not coming back. They both had not signed at this point, but that was basically all of the cap space the Lightning had. So it was very unlikely that anybody else was going to be signed or coming back. And we'll get to both Ruda and Palat here in just a few minutes. But the Lightning then put their focus on elsewhere. By elsewhere, I mean for the next offseason, because JVB loves to get a lot of his extensions done early, so he doesn't have to do too many during the current offseason, which I think is something that's really great. It has benefited the Lightning multiple times. And then so in the span of 8 minutes, the Lightning shelled out $168 million. I'm going to run through some of these really quickly, and then we'll come back through it. But so the first one announced was Mikhail Sergachev, who signed an 8-year extension, $68 million total, $8.5 million per year. Then it was Anthony Cirelli just a couple minutes later. Also an 8-year extension, $50 million total, $6.25 million per. And then Eric Chernak was the last one, also an 8-year deal, $41.6 million total, $5.2 million per for him. So, and then Sergachev, he has a full no move clause in years 1 through 4 and has a modified no trade clause, 16 teams in years 5 through 8. And that all happened in a span of like 8 minutes. So it was funny too, because I remember being on Twitter and I saw Joe Smith respond to somebody and say, yeah, I think they're going to at least try to get Sergachev done today and then focus on the other guys. And then literally in the blink of an eye, the Lightning had extended 3 of their players to all 8-year contracts. But Matt, your thoughts on some of these extensions here for the Lightning?
Yeah, they were all pretty lucrative contracts. But when you said in the span of 18 minutes, they spent $168 million?
I believe that's what it was. And not even 16, it was 8. It was 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
That's nuts. I mean, that really puts it into perspective. Overall, I like these deals. I think I'm not going to nitpick or anything. I think the Sergachev deal is maybe a little bit rich, but it's not like a ghastly overpayment. I have to, often remind myself that he is 23. He's your age, Jake. I mean,
yeah, he's just turned 24.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, just recently turned 24. But
he's a child. So,
right.
like we've seen what a sliver of what his offense can do. I think the defensive side of the game is a lot easier to hone than creating offense. So I think they are not hoping but expecting a breakout season from him sometime soon. I mean, I love Sergachev. Some people will point fingers at him. I know I definitely have, but I certainly am happy to keep him for 8 years or so. As far as Cirelli and Chernak go, I think both those deals are extremely fair. Chernak, I mean, he's a brick wall. I mean, he's a zombie out there sometimes. I've heard it put. I mean, he just takes a puck to the face and then one to the shoulder and one to the knee, and he still manages to stay out there and just do his job. I can see him being the next like Dan Girardi, blocking 2,500 shots in his career and still want more. So I think he will definitely grow into that deal, and that's what a lot of these are. These are deals that the players will grow into, and hopefully by the time that year, 5 or 6 of all of these deals, they look pretty. I'm not going to say like bargains, but they look good. They're
right.
Not they're not going to be strapping us in cap hell, especially with the salary cap supposedly going up by a wide margin by the time, well before these deals end. It's planning for the future. These guys are the core. And what does Cirelli make, 6.25 in this new deal?
Yes, 6.25. Okay. And we should mention all these contracts kick in next year because they all have 1 year left.
Yeah, and that's very typical of the Lightning management staff, getting these deals done out of the way. You don't have to stress about it. These are your guys, at least into their early and mid 30s. So I'm extremely happy with them. It's, one less thing any of us have to worry about. And yeah, again, I think all of these players will grow into their contracts.
Yeah, I love the Cirelli extension and the Cernak extension. Cernak at $5.2 million, as you mentioned, he's a shot blocking machine, tough, really good defensive.
And I think there's some offense in him. I mean,
there is a little bit.
I don't know if you see it, but like he skates really well. Like he doesn't often capitalize on it, but he drives the net, drives wide, and just hogs possession of the puck, and keeps it in the offensive zone. He's a tough guy to move off the puck, especially when he's moving his feet like he is. I mean, he tried to stop a freight train. So,
right, yeah, he's definitely got some offensive ability, and he's shown it a couple times. But he's more. If you're going to pick a side, he's a defensive guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you're right. He does have a little bit of offensive ability, which is nice. But I love that contract as just $5.2 million as well, because defensive contracts can get pretty expensive nowadays, especially when they get better. So this is good to keep him locked down for 8 years, and really solidifies part of the defense for years to come.
I know a lot of people were also worried about an 8-year deal with Cernak because he's got injury problems, and this might sound a little psychotic, but his injuries are repairable. It's not like he's got, a bad back or anything like that. His injuries come from playing the game. It comes from blocking these shots and, breaking bones, things that can be, air quote here, heavy on the air quotes, repairable and rehabable, and if you know what I mean. Again, I kind of sound a little psychotic saying.
What I would say is, what injuries? He got so many shot blocks and wasn't even on the injury report at the end of the season. From this, he did have 3 injuries during the regular season where he was out multiple times. So I do understand where people are coming from, but when it comes to playoff time, especially, he turns into the Terminator basically.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Doesn't go down.
Convinced he's a T-1000.
Right. As for the Anthony Cirelli contract, I think that's my favorite out of all these. Anthony Cirelli is a really solid forward. He's a really good defensive forward. He's been top 5 in the last 2 years in Selke voting. He might even win it one year. He did have a issue injury-wise this year. Actually, it's been reported now, which we'll get to at the end here, that he will miss a little bit of the start of the season. But he has always been a solid forward. Can score offensively, good in the penalty kill, and really shines defensively as well. So, and at 6.25, that can grow into a great contract, as you mentioned as well.
He's a complete 200-foot player, and he hasn't even come close to seeing the ceiling for him quite yet. He's still a young guy, just like the other two, super young.
Right, I believe he's only 25, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right, and I mean there's still so much of him to grow. He's not near his peak yet. He can literally only get better.
Yeah, absolutely. As for Sergachev, that one was definitely high. It caught me a little off guard because he's now being paid, or not yet, next year he'll be paid more than Victor Hedman, which is wild to think about. I mean, Victor Hedman is arguably the best defenseman in the NHL. He's always up there
unarguably
in the top 3, right? He's always in the top 3 for Norris voting. He is consistent, one of the most consistent defensemen in the NHL, if not the most consistent. And he is now being paid less than Mikhail Sergachev, which is crazy to think about. So Sergachev is being paid for. That really also just speaks to how good Hedman's contract is.
Yeah, he's got one of the best contracts in the league.
Yeah, and he still has 3 more years on it? 4?
It's at most 3.
Yeah,
which kind of scares me.
Even still, though, I mean, a couple more years, and he's still been only at $7 million, which is crazy. But back to Sergachev, he's being paid like a top 2 D pairing, so he is going to have to step up into that kind of role, especially with McDonough now gone. That's what the Lightning expect him to do. I don't think he's quite there yet. But as you mentioned, the important thing to remember is he's 24 years old. He's only 24, and can every year we've seen him, he's usually gotten better. A lot of people would say he had a little bit of a setback this year. But again, only 24 years old, he has shown so much potential and usually gotten better over the years. So by the time we get deeper into this contract, as you mentioned, this could look like a great deal. I think it's one of the more riskier ones overall for the Lightning, but you definitely can't jump the gun and say he's overpaid because there's still a lot of time for him to improve. And, he might play really well this upcoming season, and he's still on his $4 million contract. So technically, he isn't making 8.5 quite yet. So we'll see how it plays out for Sergachev. Definitely, it's a little more risky for the Lightning, but it's securing a very solid defenseman for 8 more years. And remember, this used to be Jonathan Drouin, who was kind of a disaster for the Lightning, and now it's turned into Mikhail Sergachev, who's won 2 Stanley Cups. And is going to be here for at least 8 more years, which is huge.
I don't know if I've ever told this on the podcast before, but I remember I was a huge Jonathan Drouin fan. I had a jersey of his, and I got the notification that we traded him for this bum nobody Mikhail Sergachev. Who is this guy? I was devastated.
Who is this random defenseman?
I was devastated, in shambles, and man, that's honestly one of Steve Yzerman's best trades of all time.
Yeah.
So, again, this is a medium high risk, high reward contract. So,
right.
Like every contract over, $5 million, it could age poorly. But given what we have seen from Sergachev, in his first year with the Lightning up until now, he's not close to his ceiling. And, like you did say, a lot of people have said that he has taken a step back. I'm going to disagree. I think it was just more so a temporary plateau, especially because you've got...
That's a better way to put it.
Yeah, there is no way that his development stops there. Not a chance, because we see it every game. All the tools are there. A lot of them are just kind of mental mistakes. They're not... nothing out of his ability or anything like that. They're just kind of stupid small mistakes that kind of snowball into something big. So, especially as a defenseman too, you've got such a bigger magnifying glass on yourself than like a forward maybe, at least when it comes to defensive errors. So again, he's human. He's not perfect, but again, he did this contract. I'm again. It might be a tad bit rich for my liking, but at the same time, Sergachev,
it's not terrible either.
He is right now, and will turn into a great defenseman, a franchise defenseman for the Lightning.
And I love this quote from him that he said on NHL Network. Quote from Sergachev: "I was in Mexico when I signed, and I went to go work out right away." So he knows he's got a big role to fill here, and he has already got the workouts going underway. So here, hopefully, Sergachev will continue to grow and make this deal look like a steal in a couple of years. The Lightning made one other signing yesterday, and that was defenseman Hayden Fleury to a 2-year. $1.52 million contract, $762,000 per year. So really cheap contract. Hayden Fleury was a former first-round pick. Actually, he was drafted in the top 5, if I'm not mistaken, or top 10.
He was 7th overall.
7th. Yeah, okay, it's a top 10 pick.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't.
I can't tell you which year it was, but
it was recent. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago.
I think. Well, keep going.
I can't remember exactly, but either way, he was a former top 10 pick. Hasn't really turned into anything, but this 2 years and just $762,000, it's very non-risk signing. It gives the Lightning a little more depth to their defensive role. And then again, as we mentioned earlier, so the Lightning do have 2 injuries. Anthony Cirelli and Zach Bogosian underwent shoulder surgery recently, and they're going to miss 4 to 6 months. Which will take some time out during the regular season. So Fleury is basically expected to fill in for Bogosian for those first couple of weeks, depending on how long Bogosian is out. And who knows, hopefully, or maybe Fleury can turn back into his formal 7th-round draft pick self and really turn into something. But it's a very low-risk contract for the Lightning.
Yeah, he went 7th overall in 2014.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
2014?
Yeah, he's
That's a lot longer than we
26.
thought.
Yeah, he didn't really pan out with. He was selected by Carolina, and he got. I can't remember if he got selected or signed as a free agent with Seattle, but
I
obviously
believe it was the
Seattle's.
expansion draft, wasn't it?
I think yes, it was because I couldn't remember because I know they lost a couple of people that off season, but or last off season. So obviously Seattle they were pretty. They had some good defensemen. I'm not going to say they were good at anything really. So hopefully he could be a good reclamation project. I'm not expecting anything. And what did he sign for? 750?
762, 500.
League minimum essentially. So it
Basically.
is as low risk, high reward a contract could be.
Right.
Don't expect anything. You won't be disappointed.
He's
but at
probably
the
going to
same time,
be the 7th defenseman for the Lightning while Bogosian is out.
and I think that's fine. I
Absolutely.
think that's really fine. Better than Freddie Clayson, I suppose.
Right, who actually is no longer with the team. He did not get re-signed, so he is the 7th defenseman. And then once Bogosian comes back, the Lightning will probably make a call on whether they're going to send him down or keep him up there. It also depends on injuries as well. But that was the last signing the Lightning made in free agency. The last thing that we need to talk about, as I mentioned earlier, Jan Ruda officially signed with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He signed a 3-year contract, $8.25 million total, so $2.75 per. And again, as I mentioned, they basically took that money and turned it into Ian Cole. And I think the biggest reason for this is because that they let Ruda go is because he was a right-handed defenseman, and the Lightning had a plethora or more right-handed defensemen than they did left, and I think that's why they did it. Ended up going to get Ian Cole, but thank you to Jan Ruda. He was fantastic for the Lightning over these last couple of years. Even though he's someone you don't, we talk about not saying their name often. That was Jan Ruda. He did not hear his name often on the broadcast, but he was always a really solid defenseman for the Lightning.
Yeah, he did get over scrutinized at a lot of points. He was kind of the scapegoat for a lot of people. They blamed whatever on him. He blew a card, whatever. He played 4 solid years here. He had a little bit of injury troubles along the way, but I'm telling you right now, we would have not won either of those cups without him. He was an extremely valiant warrior for us. Again, not a huge name player. It's not going to be nearly as heartbreaking a loss as something else we will allude to a little bit later. I personally, I'm really devastated by this. I really was getting to really, really enjoy Jan Ruda's game. I thought he was developing really well. So this one does. It stings a little bit. Of course, I don't have a huge attachment to him, but I think he was really finally starting to find his stride. But when you did say we had a surplus of right-handed D-men, especially Cal Foote, ready to take the next step, it was the right move to essentially swap out Ruda for Cole.
Well, anytime you have a player on your team for multiple years, it becomes tough to lose those guys, especially when you win back-to-back cups with a lot of similar guys. I think that's what makes it kind of a tougher situation to see those guys go. But we need to talk about the other one
Pop
that
quiz.
is definitely much. All right, pop quiz. I'm ready.
How did we acquire Jan Ruda?
Oh, jeez. I believe it was in a trade. And if I'm not mistaken, no, the Bishop trade was Chernak. I don't remember. I know it was a trade, though.
We traded him to the Chicago Blackhawks for Slater Cuckoo.
That's right.
For traded Cuckoo to the Blackhawks for Ruda.
For Ruda. Wow. That was a great trade. That worked out very well.
I was confused at the time, but
we could do a whole episode. Cuckoo. I did too, but he never really turned anything. We could do a whole episode on trades like that Yzerman or JBB have done that have turned out so well for the Lightning, and it may have been a little questionable at the time. But wow, that's impressive trade.
Quick tangent on that topic. Look into the Marty St. Louis trade. That trade tree It's
one.
really interesting. You'll like it a lot. But back on topic.
The next guy that we lost, and this is the tough one that I know we've been trying to avoid here, but we have to talk about it. Andre Palat is officially no longer a part of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He signed with the New Jersey Devils, 5 years at $6 million per. This was basically kind of a cap casualty kind of thing where the Lightning could not offer him $6 million. They tried to keep him. They did make a couple offers. I don't know what those were. But ultimately, Palat wanted to cash in, which I don't blame him at all for getting the money that he does deserve. I'll read some of these stats. Palat, 8th in franchise history in games played, 10th in goals, 7th in assists, 7th in points, franchise leader in plus and minus, 2nd in franchise history in playoff goals. He was Tampa drafted and raised. So major thank you to Andre Palat. He was a huge part of the Lightning organization for the last couple of years and winning these 2 Stanley Cups. And he will be missed a lot.
Dearly. I think at the end of the day, we can say, he's not going to take home any major award, especially like a franchise, record or anything. The plus minus, that really stuck out to me. But I can confidently say, at least for the next 20-something years, he will be the Lightning's most underrated player. I can't use the word underappreciated because, we really did appreciate him. It especially hurts because you hardly know, what you have until it is gone. But my God, this just opened up to me is that was the not the last, but now Kucherov is the only remaining member of the triplets line. So
that's right. Yeah.
Jeez. I know that one kind of hurts. But all 3 of those guys, Johnson, Kuch, and Palat, emerging into the NHL kind of simultaneously. It's tough, but at a certain point you have to do the changing of the guard. I say this a lot, especially in Palat's case, is that unrestricted free agency is a privilege. For the longest time, you weren't a UFA until you were 33 or something, 34, like when your career is almost over, if not completely over. So he 100% deserved this deal that he got. Jersey's kind of an odd one, but at the same time, he deserves every single cent and then some getting, coming into his checkbook. He never took a game off. He was extremely reliable, and he still will be. He's 31, but he's still got a lot of game left, and he's as clutch as they come as well. Playoff player.
Especially this last playoff run.
All 3 of these most recent ones, he has been such a sneaky, like, dark horse Conn Smythe candidate. So, again, this one is a huge loss. It's, the longest tenured Bolt that I've had to see go. So this one definitely does hurt, but it
stings for sure. But at the end of the day, and a lot of people were upset that we didn't re-sign him. It just wouldn't work. The Lightning could not afford to pay him $6 million for the next 5 years. And unfortunately, he had to go. And he also ultimately made the decision that he didn't want to stay. He could have stayed for a lower contract, but didn't. And nothing wrong with that at all. I can't blame him. Yeah, no, not at all. I don't blame him at all. But, it's just the way it works. I know a lot of people were saying, well, you should have bought out Myers, the defenseman we traded for, to help pay for it. But you have to remember, too, at the end of the day, it's a business thing. And it's not just, we have the money, we can make this work. Palat is 31. He is getting older. So I'm sure that might have been a part of the negotiations, too. Like, maybe the Lightning didn't want to give him that much on term as well. That's something you have to consider, too. So there's a lot of things that play into this kind of stuff. And it stinks to see him go. But I think the Lightning will be all right at the end of the day. Heck, remember, people panicked when we lost our entire third line last year, and we made it right back to the Stanley Cup Finals. So it's not the end of the world. It definitely stinks, and we wish Palat nothing but the best for the rest of his career.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Take a couple minutes. What was your favorite Andre Palat moment, goal, assist, just, anything Andre Palat?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. He had so many clutch goals at the the end of those games, and he was so underrated all the time. It was always amazing how he could stay underrated. I'm trying to think. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Do you have one in mind?
I want to skip the recency bias because that late goal against New York, that's a good one. But shoot, I guess this is a goal against a different New York team. This is no Islanders fans are listening to this, but the one that we had 7 guys on the ice for. That slick Kucherov pass to Palat open. I mean, that one was crucial. So that's probably my favorite moment, especially looking back in hindsight and drinking Islanders tears. It's got to be my favorite. Then there's so many others as well. I mean, he even doesn't even have to be a goal or anything. Like, I mean, he was here for so long that there's way too many.
There's so many flowing through my head. I can't think of just one. I love the time with him, though, with Kucherov and Johnson, the triplets line, when those guys were rolling, they were unbelievable to watch, and how good they were at setting each other up. That was a lot of fun.
Seriously.
That might be my favorite Palat memory. Yeah, the picture and the Christmas sweaters.
Yeah, I was about to say that was my phone lock screen for the longest time.
It's a fantastic picture, for sure. And that triplets line, I know that's kind of a lame one to pick, like it's not one moment, but just that triplets line as a whole, I think.
I wasn't asking for a moment. I said anything Palat, so I'll take it because I'm
going to go triplets, because there were so many amazing moments in that whole season, and they were a huge part of the reason the Lightning made the Stanley Cup Finals that year.
Mm-hmm. No, they were the only reason.
2015. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you to Palat. We wish him nothing but the best. It'll be interesting he'll get quite the ovation when he comes back to Tampa when we play the Devils. But I think that's about it for what we have right now. The Lightning, more than likely, probably done in free agency. They don't really have any more cap space to utilize here. They've already made their extensions. And now really it's to look forward to the preseason. And before you know it, Matt, we're going to be underway for the next season.
It couldn't come soon enough.
Anything else that I forgot to mention before we wrap up the show here?
No, you're usually the smart one, so I didn't catch anything.
Well, we thank you everybody for sticking around and listening to the podcast here. We really appreciate it. If you guys could take a second too and leave us a like or give us that 5-star rating wherever you may be listening, we really appreciate it. It really helps us out. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at RBLR Sports for all the latest podcast news and news surrounding all our different teams. Don't forget to check out other podcasts as well. The Rays are in full swing in their season right now in a huge battle with the AL East. All those teams either 500 or above, which is crazy right now. So don't forget to check out the Rays podcast as well and give them a listen. Those guys do a great job at breaking down all those advanced analytics and all that stuff. It's a lot of fun over there. So thank you guys for listening, though, and we will talk to you next time. Go Bolts.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.